Hello everybody, we're going to do lesson 3.3 in Algebra 1, Part 1. The other parts are available here. 3.3 graph using intercepts. Here's our standard objective. It is Part 1. And we got a 30-point skill sheet that goes with the classwork. And we have a 14-point notebook guide that you can get as well. Teachers, here's your bell work for your students. Graph the equation here and graph the equation here. Give your students about 5 minutes to graph these. Okay, welcome back. We're going to see the solutions now. Here's for the first one here. 3x plus 2y equals 8. We solve for y and then we plug in values here into our table. Solve for y. Bring this over here. Divide through by 2, solve for y, and then put values in your table, or use a graphing calculator. You can do that too. And then here's number 2, y equals 0. It's just the x-axis is y equals 0. Okay, so graph using intercepts. You graph the linear equation using table values. You will graph a linear equation using intercepts. So you can use the fact that 2 points determine a line to graph a linear equation. 2 convenient points are points where the graph crosses the axes. An x-intercept of the graph is x-coordinate of a point where the graph crosses the x-axis. A y-intercept of the graph is y-coordinate of a point where the graph crosses the y-axis. To find an x-intercept of the graph of a linear equation, find a value of y equals 0. So to find an x-intercept of the graph of a linear equation, find a value of x when y equals 0. To find a y-intercept of the graph, find a value of y when x equals 0. Okay, what have we got here? Here is a y-intercept up here. When x equals 0, what does y equal here? And then when y equals 0, what does x equal? It equals this. So when y equals 0, x equals 3. And then when x equals 0, y equals 6. That would be your intercepts there. Students, in your own words, why did it here for you? Through this in is where the graph crosses the x-axis, is where the graph crosses the y-axis. Here's your example here of vocabulary. Okay, so what we have here is find the intercept of the graph of an equation. So we have this here, find the x-intercept, y-intercept of the graph of this, 2x plus 7y equals 28. To find the x-intercept, substitute 0 for y, so we're going to put 0 in for y and solve for x. So what do we have then? We have 2x plus 7y equals 28. 2x plus nothing equals 28. So how do we do for that? Well, we solve for x equals 28 over 2, which equals 14, is what x equals. To find a y-intercept, substitute 0 for x and solve for y. So 2x plus 7y equals 28. We put a 0 in for x and we get 7y equals 28. So y equals 4. We're going to solve for y. Y equals 4. So the x-intercept is 14. So up here, the y-intercept is 14. We're going to call that 14. Here's your line here. Here is a line here. X-intercept is 14 up here. So we're going to call this 14. Okay, find the x-intercept and y-intercept of the graph of the equation. 3x plus 2y equals 6. So let's solve that. Find x and y-intercept first of the graph. So x-intercept is when y equals 0. We're going to find our x-intercept. X equals 2. So when y equals 0, x equals 2. At that point, then for here it is on a graphing calculator, negative 3x over 2 plus 3. When x equals 0, y equals 3. Here's your y-intercept here on a graphing calculator. Okay, this one here, use intercepts to graph an equation. So graph the equation, x plus 2y equals 4. find the intercept. So x plus 2y equals 4. X plus 2 times 0 equals 4. And then x would equal 4 is our x-intercept. So when y equals 0, x equals 4. So we're over here. When y equals 0, x equals 4, there's our x-intercept. And then for when x equals 0, y equals 2. So here's our y-intercept here. Here's a sketch of the graph for this equation here. Plot the points. So here is to look at a graph here for this equation. And there's your line through the two intercepts. That's the idea of using intercepts to graph. Graph 6x to 7y equals 42. Label the points where the line crosses the x-axis. Students, this is your equation here to graph using the x and y intercept of the graph. Okay, so for this one here, y-intercept is 6, so we have a y-intercept of 6, and then an x-intercept will be 7 is what it looks like. Yeah, over here. So here's your two intercepts here, and on your plot, this is on your grid, this is the way you would graph this equation. That's part 1 of 3.3. Get back to me for part 2 and 3. Thank you very much.